Well, hey there, idiots. Welcome back to Observe. In today's video, I'm going to be analyzing the nonverbal communication of a man who was alleged to be involved in a homicide in County Cork, Ireland. Now, many of you have requested me do this video, but for those of you who haven't requested it and maybe don't know anything about this case, that's good for you because this will be a little bit more helpful for, well, you. But more on that in just a second. Let's go ahead and roll the intro. So to clarify what I was just saying, if you haven't seen this case or heard anything about it, or you have no idea what's going on in it, then this is going to be good because I'm going to center this video around a practice style session. I've done these before. We're going to watch through the clip that we're going to analyze. You get to leave your comments as to what you think is going on in that clip, what you noticed, what stuck out to you, and then we'll go through and analyze it together, and then we can kind of compare and give some opinions at the very, very end. So for those of you who do know what this case is, please do not comment anything about it until after you've seen it, which now that I think of it, sometime down the line, it doesn't matter. Don't read the comments if you don't know what this case is, and comment whatever. But I think that's enough talking about it. Let's go ahead and watch this clip. It's very short, and then we'll give a backstory, and then we'll analyze it, and then we'll give an opinion. Sound good? Good.
I'm greatly imperiled here. I know that I have nothing to do with this. And I'm going to finish up a convicted murderer. I'm actually an innocent man. And what will happen in France is that they will probably celebrate the fact that I have been convicted, and believe me to be the killer, but all that I've succeeded in doing is convicting an innocent man. I'm facing into a very grim, dark period of my life. And yet at the same time, I know there are people here in Ireland and in Bantry and even very close by to the hotel we're in who know that I have nothing to do with this. And short of a miracle or an intervention and some new information coming out, it would appear inevitable that at a point later this year I'll become a convicted murderer in France, looking at a date in May when my life, the tectonic plates of my life are going to shift hugely. And I don't know how I'm going to handle it.
Okay, so that's the little clip that we're working with here. Now's the time to go ahead and leave what you saw in the comments below, be it outline, be it full paragraphs, it doesn't matter. This is more going to be for your style of practice to where you get to put down, you don't even have to leave it in the comments, just keep in mind what you saw, and then we'll go on through and analyze it together. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the backstory as to who this is and how he's involved in whatever's going on, and we'll just take it on from there. So, Sophie Toscan Duplantier was a French television producer who was killed outside her holiday home in County Cork, Ireland on the night of the 23rd of December in 1996. Sophie was found by her neighbor at 10 a.m. beside her house, dressed in white nightwear and boots. Her long john bottoms were caught on a nearby barbed wire fence, and blood stains were present on a gate, a nearby piece of slate, and a concrete block. Her body was left outdoors until the arrival of the state pathologist 28 hours later. He found laceration and swelling of the brain, a fracture of the skull, and multiple blunt head injuries. Her facial injuries were so extensive that her neighbor was incapable of formally identifying her. The local state police has been criticized for mishandling evidence and was alleged to have coerced and intimidated witnesses. A report concluded that while there was a lack of administration and management in the investigation, there was no evidence of high-level corruption. So that's Sophie's side of the narrative. Now we're going to take a little bit of time to talk about Ian Bailey, who is the man featured in today's analysis and the one who was suspected of the crime. He was known to local police from previous incidents of domestic violence which had resulted in a woman's hospitalization. In 2001, he was convicted of assault. A psychiatrist's report that had been prepared for the murder trial concluded that he had a personality constructed on narcissism, psychorigidity, violence, impulsiveness, egocentricity, with an intolerance to frustration, and had a great need for recognition. Under the liberating effects of alcohol, he had the tendency to become violent. After his failed case, the judge stated that Mr. Bailey is a man who likes a certain amount of notoriety. that he likes perhaps to be in the limelight, and that he likes a bit of self-publicity. While Bailey denies knowing the victim, some witnesses have contradicted this. In 2019, Bailey was convicted of murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. He was tried in absentia in France after winning a legal battle against extradition. In 2020, Ireland's High Court ruled that Bailey could not be extradited. And there are some more details to go along with that, but we'll talk about those maybe a little bit later or during the actual analysis. For now, let's go ahead and dive back into this analysis together, and we can kind of compare what you and I see side by side.
I'm greatly imperiled here. I know that I have nothing to do with this.
Okay, a couple things. First, I know that it looks like it's out of focus here and not rendered fully. That's just the footage that I could find. I was trying to find a very applicable point in an interrogation or interview to be able to show you so we could see stuff. So don't worry, your screens aren't going nuts and your internet is just fine. It's really just the video. Along with that, we are seeing some verbal stammering and stuttering. And also we're seeing some odd verbal patterns that might be based because he is an investigative journalist. So we're seeing some odd verbal techniques and patterns coming up, and we'll see how that plays out throughout the rest of this.
And I'm going to finish up a convicted murderer. I'm actually an innocent man, and what will happen in France?
He had a very large amount of difficulty saying that he was an innocent man and not a convicted murderer. Again and again and again, he stammered and stuttered around that sentence or phrase. And the reason for that is because he has some form of psychological processing that's occurring there. Whenever you see somebody have a certain flow of language and then it's broken to bits, this would be a good example of it, it means that they're processing on top of what would be considered normal conversation. So the question is why? Why is he doing that processing around that statement? Well, it's because it's a hefty statement. To be accused of being guilty of a homicide is a pretty hefty sentence, so he's having some difficulty saying that. Now, is that because he's guilty or innocent? Too early to say, but he is having difficulty there. Let's continue.
Is that they will probably celebrate the fact that I have been convicted, and believe me to be the killer, but all that I've succeeded in doing is convicting an innocent man.
He's still having difficulty formulating his sentences. Along with that, he has a continuous micro head movement no. And oftentimes this is counteracting what he's saying about him saying that he's an innocent man and his head is moving left to right in a no shake. Now, in this culture, it's a no shake. There are different cultures, and this doesn't mean the same thing all across the world. Where he's from, it does. The no shake like this is a no, and the nod like this is a yes. So when he's doing those micro movements no the entire time, it could be seen as nonverbal misalignment. He's saying he was doing one thing or is one thing, and his body language is portraying something else. This would be a red flag in my book, and I would want to be able to push more in this area.
I'm facing into a very grim, dark period of my life. And yet at the same time, I know there are people here.
He has a lot of nervousness right now as well. I'm not sure exactly what the context of this interview is, but with this nervousness, you could hear it where he takes a breath and he has a wavery breath in there. This is a psychophysiological thing. It's more difficult to control. You can hear the kind of thing as he takes a breath and a dry swallow as well. And those two things combined push me towards the direction of him having extra nerves centered around how people are perceiving him. Once again, we have the question as to why. Let's continue.
In Ireland and in Bantry, and even very close by to the hotel we're in, who know that I have nothing to do with this. And
where he's saying that no, that I have nothing to do with this, his shoulders are starting to move up and down in little tiny micro shrugs, which could be an indicator of him not having confidence in his own words. And also, along with that, him having nothing to do with this, it seems as though he is really spacing him from this, even in his vernacular. He's got too many words in between. I did not do this is all that it needs to be, but having nothing to do with this, it's a lot of space in between. Now this distancing verbally and then those shrugs as well, those would push me more towards deceit in that area. Let's be clear, there are no universal tells of deceit. And I'm not certain that I have his specific tell of deceit, so what I'm looking out for is that misalignment of nonverbal communication saying one thing words saying another thing, or these other verbal patterns that are revealing where he has himself, the subject, vastly separated from the actual action itself in his actual verbiage. Let's continue on.
Short of a miracle or an intervention and some new information coming out, it would appear inevitable that at a point later this year I'll become a convicted murderer in France, looking at a date in May when my life, the tectonic plates of my life are going to shift hugely.
He has some odd verbiage. He uses a lot of extra words. Tectonic plates of his life are going to shift, and it's strange. But that being said, it is common for people who are writers, be it an author or in his case a journalist, it is common to see that style of speaking surface up as they're used to writing in that style. So that isn't something that I'm really thrown off by, all of those extra words, just considering his background and his profession.
And I don't know how I'm going to handle it.
Okay, so this, all the way around, what characterized his little segment here, and for those of you who don't know, there is a documentary on Netflix that you are welcome to go and watch, and I suggest you do. They have a fair bit of information in there for you to be able to take in. It's a little bit longer, but I mean, if you're interested, that's where you can go. So in this little tiny section here, we saw enough nonverbal misalignment and tells of insincerity to at least alert us to his possible guilt. It would not be one of those situations to where you talk to him and then you're like, yeah, actually, he seems completely fine. He can go about his way in his day, and I frankly don't care. For him, it would be more so that there's something going on. But outside of this, to be able to give you a little bit more context as to why I still also believe that he is actually guilty, which, oh, spoiler alert, I believe he's guilty, not just because of the body language, but considering the context as well. He was known to have given extra details of the story of the crime scene itself without having been there or having had access to it in the public eye. So he didn't know about it as a journalist, so he had to know about it some other way. Now, I worked for a little spell as an investigative journalist, and many investigative journalists pride themselves at not giving away their sources, so I'm sure that he tried to chalk this up to him having maybe a source on the police force or something along those lines. But the other issue is that the timeline that he released it as didn't give him enough time to have communicated that with anybody on the team. So many people were like, well, how does he have these details that he shouldn't know that he's already writing about here? Along with that, he was said to have admitted it to somebody that he committed the crime. And considering his history of violence and his proclivity towards violence after being intoxicated, it all did line up. Furthermore, he was said to have been seen hanging around Sophie's house, kind of stalker-like. So all of this circumstantial evidence and his nonverbal communication all really did push me in the direction of his guilt. Now, there is a reasonable doubt because they didn't find things like DNA around there, and some of the crucial things that you would hope to see in a case were kind of absent. Was this because of ineptitude on the police force? Maybe some. Not sure. Regardless, the man himself fit the profile. His nonverbal communication indicated possible deceit, and too many details that he had in other instances and circumstances aligned for him to be guilty. Ergo, the sentence. So, that is my opinion. I believe that he indeed did the crime. Ian Bailey is guilty. But do you disagree? Is there something that I've missed? Or is there a detail that I haven't been able to take into account? Or is there something else that you just have an opinion on, maybe a gut feeling? Something along those lines? Let me know in the comments below. I do try to read as many as I can. I interact with them as often as I can. There's just a fair number, so I don't know. I feel limited here and there as to what I can actually do. But I do appreciate your comments and your feedback. It does help me improve my own study and research, and I like to be able to hear how you are feeling about videos and about cases, and I don't know. I feel like it builds a little bit more community for me to be able to see that and interact some with that. So let me know in the comments below. If you did like this video, consider hitting the like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell if you'd like to see impromptu live streams that disappear onto Patreon after that, because that's the only way that you'll really be alerted to that. And if you have any other suggestions for me, then I would greatly appreciate hearing about them. I have some other true crime content coming up here soon. I know that I've been sprinkling in drama and reality TV and all these different things, but I want to be able to keep my content here fresh and not burn out on a certain topic. True crime can be really exhausting. I know that a lot of you have noticed that I've been absent in the true crime scene. That's why I'm letting my mental state recuperate a fair bit, because I have to kind of sit down and hunker down into these cases and try to understand the mind of somebody who would do a brutal killing, and it's a dark place. So sometimes it's just relaxing to watch pithy drama or some sort of weird reality thing. I hope you understand, and I appreciate your patience if this isn't your style of content or you happen to see some videos that aren't. This video is partnered with, as the channel is always partnered with, the Emotional Intelligence Academy out of the UK. If you would like to be able to understand what I do and maybe go into a similar profession, then I highly suggest you check out the link in the description below. If you do that and you sign up for any of their classes, they have some smaller certificate style classes all the way up to a master's degree. You get a 10% discount on everything using that page, that link down below. And then if you do the Getting to the Truth course, then you get 50% off of that. It's a really great deal. I worked very hard to get that partnership to you, and I would love it if you would be able to take advantage of that. So consider doing that if you're interested in what I do. But without further ado, that's all that I've got for today. My name is Logan, and you have been oh so awesome, as you always are. And I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.